Hey friend, Brandon here. This is a really exciting day for me because we're going to unbox the Apple MacBook Air. So some of you are probably wondering, Brandon, why are you excited about a MacBook Air? That's because of the potential that I see in the next 2 years with Apple Silicon. And this is just the beginning. So let's talk about it because this is Tech Today. All right, let's unbox this real quick deal here. Nothing too dramatic on the MacBook Air side. All right, so what we have here is the next step up in tiers for the MacBook Air. We have the 8 gigabytes of memory and 512 gigabyte SSD that's here. And because this is the one step up, that means that 8 cores are enabled on this instead of the 7 cores that you get on the very, very basic level of the MacBook Air. All right, let's open up the lid here. Now, obviously, it looks the same. There's not much that has changed, but there's some insight or wisdom there that I'll go into. All right, there it is. And then we have a USB-C to USB-C power cable in this cute little charging brick that's at least included with the package. Let's peel this off real quick. Now, in terms of charging, this is a 30-watt charger and the usual re-materials and 2 space-gray Apple stickers. Then let's peel this off. Now, if you want more ASMR-y content, there's a channel for that up there where I go through some ASMR unboxings. So the first thing that you're probably noticing is that the design of this looks pretty much the same as what it looked like before. And there's some wisdom to that. When you have a brand new chipset for your computers, you don't want to change everything. It can be a little bit much. So having some familiarity when the internals are drastically changing makes a lot of sense. That's a good way to transition people over into what you're planning on doing in the future. All right, let's open it up. Oh, no one-handed test. Doesn't work. Okay, there we go. And it's already on. Ooh, it sounds fuller. That's one thing that I'm really excited about with the new MacBooks is the instant on feature. It's like using one of your smartphones. You just hit the power button and it's already on. Accessibility seems to be at the forefront of these new laptops, which is really great. You have a version for vision, motor, hearing, and cognitive. In order to migrate my information from one of my other Macs to this Mac, I have to have AC power plugged in. And that comes to one thing that you might notice about the MacBook Air. There are only 2 USB ports. That means once you plug your computer into an outlet, now you only have 1 port available. That might be a little bit frustrating for some people, but hey, at least there's a headphone jack. So there are a few things that do stand out about this MacBook Air. First of all, you have Touch ID, which is really convenient in terms of being able to log into your computer. I do wish that there was Face ID on their laptops. That makes a lot of sense, especially if you've ever used a Windows computer with Windows Hello. I would argue that makes even more sense on a computer. The other thing is that this 13.3-inch screen is a higher resolution. It has 227 pixels per inch. The screen brightness is 400 nits, and I do wish it was a little bit brighter, but it seems to work pretty well inside. When you go outside and maybe you're working outside of a coffee shop when that was a thing, you might want a little bit more brightness though. One thing that's really interesting about the display is that it has wide gamut support or P3 gamut support, and that means that you have more of the color spectrum. So that's really interesting for those of us who work on things like video or photos. If this MacBook Air is capable of performing a lot of the tasks that you would want as a photographer or videographer with this M1 chip at a slim form factor and a lower price, this is a very compelling laptop. But philosophically, you may not want to buy it. I'll explain that in a little bit. So Apple has stated that this should get you about 15 hours of battery life if you're surfing the web and 18 hours of Apple TV playback. I'll need to use this a little bit longer to really find out what the battery life looks like on this device, but either way, more battery life is a big deal. And after using the keyboard for a little bit, they went back to what worked before. So you shouldn't have any of those issues with keys not working, and it feels really nice. It has a good amount of travel, sounds good. I really enjoy typing on it. You also see some function keys on here as well. So this is a very interesting laptop if you're a coder. Now, I'm not gonna go through all these benchmarks and things like that because, well, there's plenty of other videos that go over that. I'm more curious about the first impressions and practical experience with the laptop. So I'll look at things like Chrome and Final Cut Pro. So let's test out the speakers because I'm an audio engineer and I care about those things. All right, let's turn it up all the way. So in terms of sound quality, it's kind of averaging about 86 decibels on this particular song, and as a whole, it has a really immersive sound to it. It sounds really full. There's a good stereo spread to it. It's not super duper bassy, but it's not really thin sounding, so it's satisfactory. The combination of factors from the volume level to the stereo spread will make it feel really immersive for most people. I think most people will be happy with it. And there's a 720p front-facing camera, which is a little bit of a bummer in 2020, but they've upgraded some of the software, so I guess it should look better. Well, let's compare it to the 16-inch MacBook Pro real quick. And this is the 2019 15-inch MacBook Pro. Does the video look better? Does it at least sound better? It should have better microphones. I don't know, what do you think? Interestingly enough, when you download Chrome, it does give you an option of downloading the version of Chrome that supports the new Apple Silicon. Early reviews and first impressions showed that the Intel version of Chrome was a bit rough on these M1 chip laptops, so it's really nice to see that Google has already supported the Apple Silicon. Why that didn't happen with a Windows laptop using ARM? I don't know, but we have to admit Apple has some influence, so this is a good thing as a whole for the industry. So maybe that will result in some better support for those Windows laptops. Now, one thing I was really interested in finding out is how many Chrome tabs could I open on this MacBook Air. So I pulled up this video with my friend Caleb where we checked out the AirPods Pro, which you can check out up here. It's tons of fun. It's running at 4K. I opened up multiple tabs just to find out what would tap out first. And the thing that I noticed is that after about 15 tabs, it started to lag a little bit more. And once I crossed 20 tabs, it became kind of frustrating to use. You can see that even the tabs just lag in terms of highlighting where my mouse is. The mouse itself will lag in terms of the operating system, so not just the browser. And memory's at about 7.5 gigabytes out of the 8 gigabytes that I have here. So this is currently at 24 tabs, and it's lagging so much that even the video itself is being kicked down to HD quality or lower than HD quality because it can't keep up with the 4K. CPU utilization is hovering at about 50%. I've seen it fluctuate a bit from the 45% to 60%. So it seems like the bottleneck is probably the memory. So while in many ways the actual performance and experience that you have with the M1 chip is a really good pro, the one downside is the fact that the memory is integrated with the chip. And of course that means that you really can't upgrade it. Not that you could before, but like especially so now. Now the M1 chips to me seem like an inflection point. This seems like a revolutionary point in terms of technology, especially with computers. I imagine things will look drastically different in the next 5 years. Now one thing I'm noticing when I'm pushing this laptop really hard is that there's no fan noise. And that's because it carries on the same tradition as the previous model. There's no fan in it. But I'm curious, how hot is it? So it's about 112 degrees Fahrenheit. It's definitely enough to notice, but it doesn't really hurt to put your fingers on it. And the underside is a bit toasty, so you know, protect the boys. So system's right now at 72% and it's dropping. And get the beach ball. Let's do the control Q and just see what happens. Yeah, you can see right here, the animations are having a little bit of a hard time. It's lagging. It's so crazy that Chrome is the thing that cripples all of these computers. Now that we quit Chrome, we're back under 3 gigabytes of RAM used and system utilization has dropped to 1.59%. Are you serious? Now it's at 0.74%, not even a percent. Okay, it's back to 5%, a little bit more realistic. Obviously, if you use something like Safari, it's gonna perform way better because it's optimized for the hardware and software, but I like using Chrome because of all the extensions and the sync options, so one thing I wanna find out is how well this works for editing videos. So Featured Brandon will pop in here and tell you how it went because this video that you're watching right now was edited on the MacBook Air. Okay, so I've been editing the video that you're watching right now on the MacBook Air while also live streaming it on Amazon Live. That's a thing. If you didn't know about it, there's a link in the description for that. But so far, battery life after 2 hours of usage is at about 25%. One thing that I've noticed is that the CPU has been hovering around 10 to 20% of utilization, so it's hardly being utilized. And then the RAM is hovering around that 7 gigabytes of RAM out of the 8 gigabytes that are available. So that's probably the biggest bottleneck that you'll run into. So if you're going to upgrade anything, you probably want to upgrade your RAM and your storage because you can't upgrade either of those. I also have to run things off of my external Samsung T7 SSD. That's because this MacBook Air has 512 gigabytes of storage, which is not enough for my video projects. At a minimum, if you're a video editor, you need at least 1 terabyte of storage. And if you have the ability and means to do so, go for 2 terabytes. That gives you a little bit more legroom. At that point though, it's about $2,000 for a MacBook Air when you have the RAM upgrades. And you may want to consider the MacBook Pro instead, which I'll have a video about that. And if it's out already, it's up here. So in terms of performance on Final Cut Pro, it's not really laggy. It's flying through clips really fast. I've really enjoyed editing on the MacBook Air. The keyboard's really nice and the trackpad is really nice to have to zoom around really quick in your timeline. Obviously, it runs insanely well on performance mode. On high quality mode, it's generally pretty good, but after a while, it does lag behind a little bit. Some of that's because I'm importing and rendering at the same time. So once that's all done, that might be a little bit different. Keep in mind, I'm editing all this stuff in ProRes, which is kind of the best thing to use in Final Cut Pro. And the other thing to keep in mind, especially if you are a creative professional or entrepreneur, is the fact that some software is not compatible with Big Sur. So it's not actually the M1 incompatibility issue there, it's actually the software. So I haven't been able to use some of my plugins on the actual video here. So why do I think you shouldn't buy the MacBook Air right now? Well, the main reason is just that this is Gen 1 of the M1 chip. This is just the beginning. You really don't want to be in a transition year for new technology. Not all software is optimized for it. The leap in performance and other things in the second and third generation is likely to be quite significant, and we'll probably see a hardware refresh next year. Remember, this is a transition device. You change the inside, but not the outside. That way you don't really freak people out. Now, if you need a laptop right now, I can confidently say already that this is probably a really good buy. It runs smoothly, it runs really fast. If the battery life does indeed last a long time, that's a huge win. And the price for an Apple Mac laptop is not terrible, especially with that education discount. So for my review, I'm really curious, what are some of the things that you really want me to look into? What are some practical things that you use that you want to find out if it works well on the MacBook Air? Benchmarks are great and all, but I care about the practical experience. So if you're one of those people who want to purchase this right now and not wait for another generation, or maybe you just need something right now, go ahead and click the links down below in the description. Those are affiliate links and it helps support the channel. Let me know your thoughts and your questions by leaving a comment down below and in the This Is Tech Today community Discord chat server. Thank you so much for watching This Is Tech Today, where we talk about the intersection of technology in our everyday lives, in business, and all things creative. Until next time.